Hello, and welcome to probably the most positive video I've ever filmed on this channel. This is my favourite books of 2022. Honestly, I've not actually had the best ever reading year, I'd say. I did find two of my new favourite ever books though this year, so that makes it alright for me. I'm going to be talking about 7 of my favourite books that I read this year. I did really want to make it 10, but there just weren't 10 that I felt that strongly about, so it's going to be 7. But first, I really want to talk about some honourable mentions first that maybe weren't quite favourites, but I still really liked and thought about afterwards. So first off, I Hate Men. Not sure how to pronounce this author's last name because she's French. This is a collection of essays all about why it may be worth hating men. Also, this perfectly matches my nail varnish. I love that. As you can see, I've underlined quite a bit in this book. I really enjoyed this. I agreed with a lot of things. It's all about misogyny, sexism, and yeah, definitely worth a read. Secondly, Surrender by Joanna Pocock. This is a book about a woman leaving her life in London and moving to the Montana wilderness with her family. The nature writing is really beautiful, and I've thought about this for quite a while afterwards. The other books I actually physically haven't got here with me either because I read them as an audiobook or on ebook. There's Funny You Should Ask by Alyssa Sussman. It's a romance book about a famous actor and a journalist who is writing a piece about him. I really enjoyed it. It's one of the less cringy romance books, so I really enjoyed it for that reason. Then there's Everything I Never Told You by Celeste Ng, which is a family story about a Chinese-American family. One of their daughters goes missing and is found dead. It's not really a mystery, it's more about the family dynamics and how they got to that point. And last but not least is Sweet Bitter by Stephanie Danler. I really enjoyed this book. I heard a lot of mixed things about this. I'm not sure why. This is kind of a classic New York coming of age story, but about a girl that works in a kind of fancy restaurant. And I really enjoyed it for all of those things, but mostly I think if you've ever worked in a restaurant, you'll relate to this. Okay, now let's get into the favourites, the best of the best. I think the first one is going to come as no surprise to anyone. It's Idiot by Elif Batuman. I loved this book so much. I read it almost exactly a year ago now, and I've not really stopped thinking about it. I've never related to anyone in a book so much as I do to Selin, and I've never felt so seen. This is a book set in 1995 about an American Turkish girl. Her parents are Turkish immigrants and she just starts her first year at Harvard. That's sort of the basic premise, I'd say. But what I really love about this book is firstly how I said the relatability, and also the language chosen, like some of the words chosen are just so clever, so funny. Also the way that she talks and thinks about her love interest in this book, Ivan, it's my favourite way I've ever read about someone experiencing a crush. I could go on about this book forever and ever, but I'm really trying to keep this a bit shorter. This and one of the other books that's going to come on later on in this video are like my top tier favourite ever. I love this, and I'm about to start the sequel finally. I've been putting it off because I've been scared, because I just love this so much and I didn't want anything to like tarnish that. But I've heard nothing but good things. So then secondly, by the way, these are all in the order of how I read them throughout the year, not on my least and most favourite order. So, Sally Rooney's Beautiful World, Where Are You? I very, very, very much doubt I have to say anything about this because everyone has read this for good reason. But very shortly, this is a novel about 2 women, Alice and Eileen. They live somewhat different lives and they're very close friends. They communicate mostly via email because they don't live close to each other anymore. I would say this is a story about human relationships mostly. Again, very relatable. I love this so much. Another one I haven't got here with me because I've listened to it on audiobook is Book Lovers by Emily Henry. This is a story about 2 people, Charlie and Nora, who both work in publishing. They never really got on. Then Nora spends a month away in this little town with her sister called Sunshine Falls. They make fun of it in the book as well. Charlie also happens to be staying there, as you can imagine. They fall in love with each other. I really like the fact that both of the characters aren't super likeable in the beginning, but the more you get to know them, the more you like them. It's really cute. I love Charlie. I'm not a big romance reader at all, even though there were 2 romances I already talked about. But the only ones I ever read are Emily Henry and Funny You Should Ask. So maybe I just don't know what I'm talking about at all, but they're 2 that I really enjoyed. Next up is I'm Glad My Mum Died by Jeanette McCurdy. Again, another one I don't have to talk about really because everyone and the mum has read it for good reason. It really is that good. In this memoir, Jeanette McCurdy talks about her life growing up, how she got into acting, which she never really was that into, but mostly it's about her struggles with her relationship to her mum. It's really heartbreaking, it's really honest, but it's also really funny. Definitely 100% worth a read. If you've not read it somehow, do so. Another one I really enjoyed this year was My Policeman by Bethan Roberts. I haven't got it with me because I lent it out actually, but it's one that I didn't think I would enjoy as much as I did for some reason. If I'm 100% honest, I initially only picked it up because I knew Harry Styles was is starring in the movie, and I really wanted to read it beforehand. But I ended up enjoying it so much, even though enjoy maybe isn't the right word for this one. This story follows a sort of love triangle consisting of Marion and Tom, who are married, and Patrick, who him and Tom have a sort of love affair, a secret one. It's set in Brighton in the 1950s, and you really feel that. I feel like the sense of place is really strong in this one. I love this because it's, again, so tragic and heartbreaking, and I really like that. I love when a book can make me feel like these sort of intense emotions. I really felt all of the characters' emotions so strongly, and I was so invested in all of their lives and all of their stories. It also felt really detailed to me. All of the emotions were put on the page so well and so detailed. This one is one where the book is way better than the movie, in my opinion. And second to last is A Head Full of Ghosts by Paul Tremblay. This is it's marketed as a horror book, an exorcism story. It's a story about a suburban family where one of the daughters shows signs of what they call acute schizophrenia. So naturally, a sort of exorcism is suggested. And because the family is struggling financially because the dad's been laid off recently, they invite this family crew into the house and film a reality TV show. This book is told from the point of view of the little sister Mary, partly in the past and partly her reflecting onto the past 15 years later. And she's interviewed by this best-selling writer who's trying to write a story about her and about her sister's exorcism. I know that this one is very hit or miss for people. I feel like I've seen very varied opinions about this. Obviously, since it is in this video, I really enjoyed it. If you're not a fan of ambiguous and open endings, maybe this isn't for you. I was a big fan of the ending though. There's kind of two endings. There's one end to the story and there's one end to the book. Both of them I thought were really cool. Last but by no means least, this and The Idiot were my favourite books of the year, and it is A Little Life by Hanya Yanagihara. I put off reading this book, like I think many people, for a long time, because I've heard so many people talk about, so many people say it was their favourite book, but it was also completely traumatic, completely heartbreaking, trauma porn. I've heard all of these things, and I was so intrigued because of that, but also I didn't know if I could handle it. So the reason I did end up picking it up, I actually picked it up this month, I finished reading it like early December, was because they announced that there's going to be a play of this in London. And I was so intrigued by that. I really wanted to see it, but before I booked my ticket, I really wanted to read it first to just kind of know what I was getting myself into, if I would enjoy it. So I picked it up. It's a huge book, 720 pages, I think. If you don't know what this is about, it's hard to say. We follow a friendship group consisting of Jude, Willem, Malcolm and JB, and we follow them through most of their lives. We see how the relationship between the four of them, but also individually, changes and builds. It's also about Jude's incredibly tragic and traumatic past. The word trauma porn is probably the right way to describe this book. There's so many things packed in this where you just think, is this really necessary at this point? I know that there's a huge amount of discourse about this, like, is it necessary to put all of these things into one book and all of these things into one person's life? Is it necessary? I don't know where I stand on that, honestly. I've not stopped thinking about it, but I don't really know where I stand on that. But I did end up falling in love with this book and with these characters so much. I finished this about 4 weeks ago. I've not stopped thinking about it. When I finished it, it was like I lost people that I knew in real life. But that's not to say that the reading experience wasn't incredibly heavy and long and really emotionally taxing. This is definitely not a book for everyone. I wouldn't go around recommending this. if you do want to read this, I would definitely read up on it. I did. I kind of knew a few things before going into this book, which I'm not upset about. But if you do feel fit to read it, all I can say is that it is incredibly beautiful. It's also heartbreaking, but it's also happy. There's so many happy, like heartwarming things that happen in this book, and I did cry a lot. I'm not a cry reader at all. I rarely even tear up at books. I'm a big crier in general in life. I love a good cry. But with books, that rarely happens. This one made me cry a lot. Obviously, the ending, clearly. But also happy things, like a lot of heartwarming things did make me well up and make me like warm inside. No book has ever impacted me as much as this one has. I get emotional even talking about it. I'm like, oof. I am thinking about whether to read People in the Trees or To Paradise. Obviously, this is her most famous book. But if you've read either To Paradise or The People in the Trees and you liked A Little Life, would you say those two are worth reading? Because also I know that both of them are also quite long. Are they worth the investment and the effort of reading them? Yes or no? I would love to know. So that wraps up my favourite books of 2022. It was very hit or miss for me this year, but it was worth it for me, especially for these two. I'm so grateful I got to read these and experience them. I love them so much. They're very dear to my heart. If you have read anything this year, I would love to know what your favourite book was. I always look forward to watching these videos at the end of the year. They're just so positive and you get so much inspiration for your own reading. It's just, I love it. It's great. So if you'd like to share your favourite books with me, I would very much appreciate that. I would love to hear it. I've also got a feeling that 2023 will be, for some reason, my reading year. I've got a feeling that's going to be successful and great, and I'm going to find a lot of new favourite books. I don't know why, I've just got a feeling in my tummy for some reason. So I hope that's going to be true. I did just put 3 books on hold at my library for a video that's going to probably come out soonish, like next month maybe. I think I'm going to be putting myself up for a successful reading experience. We'll see. I'm very optimistic about my reading for some reason. As I said, this year was very hit and miss. There's so many things that I just felt very meh about, but that's going to change. I'm going to keep my fingers crossed and say that's going to change in 2023. And clearly, the more you read, the more you know about your own reading taste. So I feel like I learned a lot about my reading taste, what I like, what I don't like, what I can just give a miss. So yeah, it can only really get better, can't it? So I'm going to leave you on a positive note. And again, thank you for watching. I'd love to hear about your favourite books of 2022. And I'll see you in my next video. Bye.